Okay, well, today we're going to work on a really unhappy shoulder, and we've gotten some information about my mom's shoulder and how she hurt it and some other things. Um, she can really identify and pinpoint exactly where she's experiencing pain on her shoulder, and it seems to be right in that bicipital groove. Ma, can you show me? Right, and that is a so that's a that is a really common spot, right? The anterior deltoid is right there, and she does have a anteriorly rotated shoulder, and her hands and arms are under a lot of strain and palpation of her biceps. There's also a lot of pain. All of that is really consistent with um, what's happening in that shoulder. She did took a stiff arm fall, where she fell with a pretty stiff arm, and you can imagine probably disrupted the function of the acromion humeral attachments here on top. And so that probably really irritated things. Um, I haven't done this yet, but as I continue to palpate, I would look underneath here and see if there's any pain under here, which I can see this is very sensitive. And this is just a palpate on her teres major and teres minor. These are under a tremendous load because of the anterior rotation of the shoulder. These are at the end of their rope. And so we'll know that when we tell her what kind of exercises to do afterwards, it'll be to strengthen those in her back. And I know she's been doing like the doorway stretch and some stretches in the front. Unfortunately, the effect is often to irritate the thing that you're trying to work on. Is that sometimes happen when you're stretching out the front? Yeah. And so that kind of stretching can sometimes irritate the joint even further. And so we have to be aware of if we're gonna if we're gonna offer that they have to stay on the sweet side of it. And that's what I call it. I say you've got to stay on the sweet side of that stretch. You don't have to do any heroic stretching. You just want to do more of a range of motion, and that'll help prevent a frozen shoulder. When that shoulder gets so unhappy that it starts to lock and freeze function, um, all of and that's how she's going to end up with carpal tunnel, or she'll end up with some elbow pain because the 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 function of that joint is going to get transferred into other parts of her arm, and when that happens, then um, they get overused and they get used incorrectly. The work I'm doing here, starting on the extensor surface, is I'm gonna push all of this into her neck, and of course she has some neck and shoulder pain, and she has some of that really classic mid back, even thoracic pain, and so that tells us that when we get into working on these ribs, that these are also probably going to be this little sore there too, isn't it? Yeah.
Not
So
too bad,
not too bad. So this costal margin will we'll be using all of that tissue to gain some momentum to help things out and push all that forward. Um, so knowing all those things, the beginning of the session for me would be to start at the hand and wrist and forearm. And um, in this case, I've got one hand. I'm not doing a pull down here, but I've got that right. You can feel that
but
that I'm making a sort of a two-handed connection, and I'm just looking for straight lines. How how much of this does this arm go on the table and sit like that? That's going to tell you that there's a lot of rotation here, and it's really tight up here. Does it sort of go down there very easily? If it does so, then we know that things are working pretty good. Um, but she's got some stuff around her elbow that it'll make a big difference to how her shoulder feels if we can work loosen up these arms. Just sort of moving this stuff up around her condyle, straightening it out. Yesterday we were having a quarantine dinner, and mom did something, and she said, "Oh my God, it happened again! I got a trigger finger." And she showed me, and sure enough, she had it was your um, which finger?
big figure.
Ring finger on her right hand, um, coinciding with that shoulder pain. But that was she got a real trigger finger there. So um, one of the ways we'd work on that is right here from the um, flexor surface. And I'm actually just working on her triceps here. This is also sort of a shoulder thing. I'm sort of we're working on that, her elbow functioning. And it's at just above that insertion point. The triceps get so dense and tough there that to offer more natural movement, we've got to open that stuff up. So now for the work on the flexor surface, I'm going to kind of find, she's got a little crease here. I'm just going to find my way into that crease with my hands. And I'm drawing down. I'm drawing down. I've got her elbow in my hand and I'm drawing down. I'm going to take your elbow straight out toward the door. Just your elbow. Nudge your, oh, the other way. Yes. Good. And back in. Good. And I'm going to help that movement feel good. Oops. And go ahead and move out. Good. Yep. And back in. Good. Is that okay there?
Yeah. It's painful.
Painful. Good. That's it. And back in. And do a little less of that movement, a little more gentle. Fine. Right there is all you need. Good. Back in. And she's got a serious knob at that flexor surface. And so, good. And back in. I know it's difficult to see, but my hands are like that. That's what I'm doing. And then as she, oops, I can feel some change already taking place. We're reorienting her. Good. And rest. She's wanting to push a little bit too hard. It's unusual to have your body work session be on film. So just nudge that out a bit. Good. Yep. And back in. And she can even feel probably that I'm on that flexor digitorum, all the way connected down into that finger, and we're already working on it. Yeah.
I'm feeling it right in the finger.
She can feel that right in the finger. So we found it. Now we found it. Now we know that we're in the right spot, and we are going to feed all the way. Now I'm underneath, and I'm drawing down with my hand, drawing down like this with my hand. Take your elbow out of it. Uh-huh. Good. Back in. Very good. Those are good movements. Good. And out again. Uh-huh. And back in. We go. And out. Good. And back in. Sometimes I also like to see how far in can I push an elbow. What does it feel like when we go the opposite way? When a lot of times when folks start to get elbow pain, they'll walk through a door and they're knocking it on the side of the door because their arms are so far removed from their body, or there's a part that's so tight that they end up walking around. Obviously, this is greatly exaggerated, but so the other side of that is let's see what it's like to push it back in, and sometimes actually the feeling of that can be very supportive and nurturing. It can feel like, oh my God, my elbow. If somebody's had some tennis elbow or a golfer's elbow, it'll feel like their elbow just belongs to someone else, and giving it back to them can be very good, can be very supportive. Especially body workers, massage therapists and body workers. They're giving so much with their hands and arms and their bodies and their souls and their minds that pushing back into the system, pushing back into the form can feel really good. These are hot spots, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are okay. Now it's not too much, is it?
Mm-mm.
If it gets to be too much, you can just let me know. And now, just while I'm working on her hand, she has her hand. I don't know if you can see this. Don't move. Yep. Her hand is pretty sharply turned to this direction, and so that's a signal that I know I'm going to have to work on that palmar fascia. I know I'm going to have to work in there.
You feel.
Now here we are revealing this flexor surface, and I'm working to open all this stuff up. Does that feel okay?
Mhm.
Weird?
No, it's okay. I had carpal tunnel surgery in the hand.
Oh, this was the hand, yep. So, maybe that shoulder has been brewing for a little while. Maybe things work up the chain as well as down the chain. Feel okay?
Mhm.
Still a little numb there?
Nope, not at all. Just with pressure.
Yeah. I'm working around the hypothenar eminence. Open up your hand a bit. Uh-huh. Good. And rest. That's good. Whoop. Got a hot spot in there, huh?
The joint was replaced.
This joint was replaced there. Okay.
And it's really sunken in since as you can see.
Mm-hmm. Both hands.
Mhm.
Open up your hand. Uh-huh. And rest. That feel a little better?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. There was an example where I got my ego involved. I was working too intensely on Mom's hand and forgot that it needed some love. It needed some nurturing. Does that feel okay?
Mhm.
Should feel good. Right. And now I'm just making layers. You can feel I got one layer on top and I'm moving it across and the other layer. Feel okay? Yeah. Should feel nice.
Mhm. It's fine. There's probably some scar tissue in there.
She's got a bunch of scar tissue. You got a bunch of scar tissue in here. Just working on the joints, mobilizing them, identifying each one, putting some space in the hands. I can't say that these are necessarily standard techniques or techniques that I would apply to every person, but these are techniques that seem very useful now. At this point, you're probably wondering when I'm going to work on your shoulder during the shoulder session.
It'll be interesting to see if my finger still triggers.
Yeah. But that's looking really good. This is looking really good now. This is looking really good. In fact,
I notice that this is sticking forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like when I look at my shoulders, this one is
Yeah.
leaning forward now.
Let's see if we can pull that back a little bit. Is it okay?
Mm-hmm.
This was a technique that Ronnie showed me in our most recent class here. There we go. And I'm just de-rotating that shoulder back and down. Whoops. Feel okay? A little too much?
It hurts, but go ahead. It's used to being up there.
It's used to being up there, and what we're finding is we're reevaluating where that normal is. This is sometimes we've got to just show somebody where normal is. Put it where it well, put it where it belongs, and then make it move a little bit. Reach down for your foot. Good. Feel okay? Good. And reach down again. Very good. And rest. Good. How's that coming?
Good.
Yeah. We'll be doing some of this on our side. We're going to need to do some of this on our side.
You want me to go on this side now?
No, not yet.
It's tender up there.
Tender up there. I think that had to do with the fall. Working the axillary here. And I'm just trying to get on the front side of those posterior rotators. And you can find them pretty nicely in the shoulder. I also like the idea of leveraging space from the superior most part of her humerus laterally. So being able to push that arm out, giving space in that shoulder joint. When you look at a really unhappy shoulder, it looks like it is just covered in duct tape and it's so tightly knit onto that person's body. And I think in this case, this one is so tightly knit onto mom's body. And as a result, she probably has pretty weak inferior angle and she'll have pain in the mid of the back because this is going nowhere. So every time she lifts up her shoulder, it comes in as one super system. And the place that has to yield is down at that inferior angle. Let's if you face that way on your side. That's good. That's good. This I stole from Amy during a Thai massage session one time. That should feel kind of nice.
Yeah, it's good.
If it's real crunchy, you can slow it down a little bit, but mom's isn't crunchy at all.
I don't feel it.
It's crunching?
No.
No.
Before I could feel crunch, but it's not crunchy now. That's good.
That is good. I think you're going to feel great. Is that okay?
Mhm.
Yeah, and here we get a different vantage point for that shoulder. Now she's not standing, but it's probably it's more like it might be when it's not when she's not lying down at least. And we can see that she's got some she got some trouble here. These things separated a little bit. And try not to fall
That is the goal.
anymore.
Tightness has been spreading by like to a bigger and bigger
Mm-hmm.
space in my shoulder, neck, and really down to my forearm.
Yeah. Turn your nose down toward the table. Yep, good. That's it. Good. Nose down again. Kind of rotate down. Yeah, that's it. Good. And rest. Again, I'm more making layers than I'm doing anything else here because it feels like that's the where we're at in this session. That's the most important thing to do. There may be layers, other sessions where I go in a little deeper, but that wouldn't be necessary today. Does that feel okay?
Mm-hmm. It's tender.
Tender.
Super tight.
It feels real tight. Yeah, it does feel real tight. A lot of the times when you train your hands to identify tightness because something is so wicked strong, and a soccer player whose calves are outrageously powerful because they're kicking and running and standing on one foot, pivoting, or if it's tight because they are muscles that are beyond the capacity of what they have the strength to do. So they're functioning at at full capacity at all the time, and they need more strength. And once your hands get used to this idea of like, wow, that's a tight muscle, but it's not a tight, strong muscle. It's a tight muscle that's just doing everything it can to hang on. Um, you'll really start to think about and approach body work in a very different way. Does that feel all right?
Mm-hmm. All right meaning a level I can tolerate, or all right meaning it doesn't hurt at all?
Well,
It's tolerable.
but you're really feeling it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back there. Mm.
So another place that's maybe a little underpowered and under a lot of strain, and that's where we're all under a lot of strain. And so rather than pushing away from her body, I'm pushing towards her body. I'm trying to reinforce what these muscles are doing, not to take them further away. Side lying pec minor work is not fun for anyone involved, but very effective. let that arm kind of hang for me. Just let that hang. That's good. That's good. Does it feel okay?
Mm-hmm.
Work to mobilize that arm a little bit. Does that feel all right?
That's tender.
Tender. Well, we're gonna really ease up. See if I can get you to. Yeah. That's all. Probably all we're gonna do is right about like that.
That's where I think reaching forward is focused right there.
Uh huh. Working on the teres minor here. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Lots of trigger points in here.
There sure is. Well, there's lots of points that are in need of attention, and so we're